6-0, dominance, three-peats, and the last dance. Those are the words that describe the '90s Chicago Bulls. When we talk about the greatest teams of all time, they are definitely in the conversation. You want championships? They got 6 in 8 years. Want three-peats? Because that's what dynasties are made of? They got two of those. You want stats? They got the 72 win record that's only topped by Golden State Warriors right now. And also, they're the first team to have three guys make the first defensive All NBA teams in the same year. You even got the fun stories by pretty much watching Dennis Rodman, or the reason MJ really left the league the first time. Like, imagine if social media really existed while Rodman was playing. If you trace back the origins of this team, it all starts back on that impactful day in the 1984 NBA draft when the GOAT himself was drafted, the real-life Skywalker, Michael B. Jordan. Oh wait, my bad, typo. Michael Jordan. The Bulls don't get there without Michael Jordan. Before MJ, you didn't draft perimeter players to be your number one option. Just like how guys like Charles Barkley said shooters don't win championships before the NBA Finals in 2015 that the Warriors won. Michael Jordan won every possible award in college, and they'll still fail to draft him number one or number two that year. You always drafted the bigs back then. Before anyone says anything, Magic and Bird did win championships, but they were both 6'9" or above, making them bigs in most areas or possibly centers in today's game. Also, Bird came into the league playing power forward. You can look it up if you don't believe me. After giving MJ a good percentage of the credit pie for all those Bulls championships, if you were to ask people who deserved the second most credit, you would probably hear Scotty, since MJ himself said, whenever you mention my name, you also mention Scotty also. You can also hear some analysts say Phil Jackson, due to leading MJ to all those championships, and then you also have the fact that he led Kobe to 5 championships on his own also. In this video, I'll be talking about how someone that most people don't talk about should be in the conversation, Deborah Jordan, because she gave birth to the GOAT. I'm just kidding. I would like to say this person should be Jerry Krause for being the second most deserving of credit. So that would be the purpose of this video, me trying to describe why Jerry Krause should get the second most credit for all those championships. This video really came into idea after watching The Last Dance a couple of years ago, and then the whole GOAT debate coming back due to LeBron being the scoring leader. I mean, there's always been a debate, but it became more prevalent a lot more during this year. A lot of times when talking about championships, we talk about Pittman, Phil, and obviously MJ, as I mentioned before. What if I told you there's someone that was responsible for the championships outside of MJ, or at least deserves a lot more of the credit pie? Enter Jerry Krause. If you saw The Last Dance, then you know how amazing this short goblin wizard picker of talent was. Like, you know that smart kid in class that always gets the right answers but is just annoying? That was Jerry Krause. It kind of sucks that The Last Dance was made after Jerry died, since it would have been nice to see his point of view, since one can say The Last Dance illuminated some relationships and also wrecked some relationships. Just look at the Scotty and MJ relationship after The Last Dance. But it also allowed the world to see more of Dennis and some extra fun stuff with Steve Kerr, such as his childhood and the impact of his dad dying on him. So first let's talk Phil Jackson, arguably the greatest coach of all time and in conversation for the second most credit for all those championships. Phil Jackson was a player in the NBA that won 2 championships with the Knicks in the 1970s as a role player and sometimes coming off the bench. In the 80s, Phil Jackson was actually coaching another country. He was actually coaching in South America, for those that didn't know. Let that set in. It wasn't like he was coaching in a prominent European country. He was teaching in South America. That's as far as possible when thinking about finding possible countries to find the best NBA coach of all time. This would be most similar to if we went looking for the greatest next basketball player of all time in the Philippines, a country known for its short people. He was far from the NBA coaching position as far as possible. When Phil Jackson even got there to the Bulls, it was kind of another problem. The problem name was Doug Collins, aka the head coach. For those that don't know, Doug Collins had a scheme in which he ran a D'Antoni offense, much like Harden with the Rockets, except that you actually got actual defense and actual clutch shots in the playoffs. MJ was winning that way and put up crazy stats. One season, I believe he averaged 36, 8, and 8. which today game would probably be like a 38 or 40-point triple double. And his team did win a lot of games that way. As Doug Collins once described the offense as, it's we hand MJ the ball and get out of the way, aka a heliocentric offense, where one player has the ball most of the game and he assists most of the plays. Think Harden Rockets or the Sun Nash or the Nash's Suns. But the problem with heliocentric offenses, they don't win you championships. The reason for that is if you can shut down the ball handler, the offense pretty much stops. That was literally the plan to stop the Nash Suns in the playoffs. Just ask the Spurs. Krause was the guy that found Phil and used him as a replacement for Collins, who at the time was winning games and could have won one or more two championships to give him some more time in 1 or 2 years. Collins was also loved by Jordan, since he let him do whatever he wanted. Doug Collins literally gassed the beep out of Jordan, not trying to get demonetized. Think about this. Collins was the guy that gave Jordan most success while getting close to the finals by making the conference finals. Krause literally saw enough potential in Phil Jackson and enough to replace a successful coach with Phil Jackson and bet the future on it, even though he knew it would make their star player Michael Jordan mad. Jordan has literally said in interviews, I didn't want Phil at first, and I like Collins. Now Phil Jackson is considered the greatest NBA player of all time, with 11 championships as a coach. Thanks, Krause. Then you have Scottie. Scottie, arguably a top 5 power forward of all time, top 7 at the worst. A player some would consider the best wing defender of all time and top 10 defender of all time. Scottie wasn't exactly a high pick coming into the league. He spent 4 years in Arkansas College, which wasn't exactly known for producing talent. Then Damian Lillard playing at Weber State, going into the NBA draft. When Scottie originally went to college, he was actually a manager there and was a point guard due to being 6'1", which is why he would play pseudo point guard role in the Bulls, because he already developed those guard skills back in college. The Bulls had to trade up to get to him, because even though he was a diamond in the rough, teams were still interested in him, since he was a top 10 pick. But he wasn't an amazing pick to where other teams wanted to pick up for him. He was supposed to go to Seattle, so just imagine him playing with Gary Payton and Sean Big Boy Cav Kemp. Krause saw Scottie and literally was one of the few NBA scouts that went to see his game and see him play live. He saw the potential, and just so people know, MJ was so good they were never going to get a lottery pick again, while MJ was playing for the Bulls. If they didn't know this pick, it was going to be hard for them to get another quality all-star player with Jordan, especially when people were signing like 10-year contracts back then, or 7 years at the least. And you also had the whole mentality of I want my whole team back then. We're not pairing up like you see in NBA plays nowadays. The only reason they got this pick was because MJ had a foot injury and only played like 20 games that year. Something like this would probably never going to happen again. Even then, they still had to trade some of the picks to go up in the draft. Krause did pretty much the equivalent of what the Lakers did back in 1996 with Kobe. You also have Horace Grant, who was drafted 1 year later by Krause, who was arguably the third best player on the first dynasty, the first three-peat. And you also have center B.J. Armstrong that was drafted with Horace Grant, that was also a key role player, also drafted by Krause. You also have the fact that Krause wanted Dennis to come to the team, even though arguably nobody in the league wanted to play with him or have them on his team, after the whole senatorial disaster with Greg Popovich, a coach that some people consider a great NBA coach of all time also. So you had Krause get the greatest NBA coach of all time, while also getting, in both cases, the third best players in the three-peats and other quality role players. Pretty influential, if I say so. Krause would also then choose Tony Kukoc, who was drafted in a time when Europeans weren't exactly a commodity, like Dirk and Luka, let alone a dynasty. There are people saying that this man could have easily been on the Hall of Fame if he was on a different team, and in contention for the greatest six men of all time right now as a Bulls player. Krause was the one that first paid him attention when no one else did. As much as I like to give Jerry credit for all these Bulls successes, they say pride happens before a fall. Like I said, Jerry arguably deserves the second most credit, but guess who deserves the number one credit? The man with the most famous tongue, MJ. If we be honest, Krause was jealous of MJ and the fact that he wasn't getting the credit that he felt that he deserved, even though he did deserve some of that credit. He probably felt that he deserved way too much than he really deserved. Or at least that's how some of the players felt. Krause would eventually completely blow it up after the '98 season just because of his jealousy, and the rest is history. The Bulls never won another championship, and Jordan retired after that season. We don't talk about the Wizard years, just like we don't talk about how Wade was on the Cleveland Cavaliers. In life, sometimes we look back on mistakes and wonder how we would have fixed or done things differently. But being able to learn and grow from these mistakes is what makes us human. So thank you for your time. Please like and subscribe, and videos posted every Sunday. Goodbye.